Channel. Thank you so much for tuning in for Sunday at Mike's. We've made it through we're about to start another week here. And so we're starting off our Sunday here. Um, Wherever you are in the morning, afternoon, or evening, I do appreciate you spending the time to start a Sunday off here or end one. Always greatly appreciate. Scott, how you doing? Welcome, sir. How you doing? And before we get started here, again, just want to say thanks, guys. Every one of you is greatly appreciated, always appreciated by me. And looking forward to tonight's live stream. We're just going to have a nice little conversation here tonight, nothing too serious. While we wait for more people to show up here in the live stream, I will talk about things that have gone on here at Upstairs to the Right Music. Guys, I am about to start my monthly guitar safari. Not looking forward to it, to be honest with you. I am looking forward. It's one of those exciting things, not exciting things now at this point. Um, but I've got that gearing up. I will get to that here tomorrow, hopefully. And I want to try and take some time off too, just this week. So maybe I will be shooting a few more videos this week. We'll see. I hope that I will have a little bit more time, just a few days, not the whole week. I can't do that, but just a few days. So expect more videos coming out. I think I'll be able to do a pedal review here coming up here this week. So check that out when it does come out. What else? I put up two shorts this week. The first short that I put up was for the guitar I was talking about in the last live stream, the guitar show that's being held this week in Matsumoto, Japan, by Divisor. Divisor, the sensei there was a gentleman by the name of Momose. He passed away recently, but they were showing off some of his work and some of the work that they do with cherry wood and some of the guitars that they use a special kind of wood. They don't make a lot of them using this, but they were beautiful. They were gorgeous. So I had a friend of mine who was in town shoot that for me and send that to me from Japan. So that's happening right now as we speak. So check that out. The other short I did was just promoting my record. Just trying to drive up some sales here. Every penny counts. Just, okay. So, but I like that because I took the album cover and I used 3D animation for the first time. I'm starting to looking to using a little bit of that AI animation for things. So at the very least, it's a very interesting little short to look at as you see my album cover come to life. And actually pretty cool in its own way. Welcome to you, Mr. Watson. Good to have you here. Good to have you here. So yeah, there's that, guys. Um, yeah, feel a little beat up from the week. It was a rough week. It was a tough business week. So I really want to take it easy tonight. Just want to kind of ease into things. And I was thinking about topics for tonight, things to talk about. And I said, well, um, I want to keep it light and breezy, nothing too serious. I do want to keep it on topic with guitars, of course, because this is a guitar channel. That's what we talk about here. But at the same time, I wanted to make it interesting. And so I came up with a kind of a ranking list, ranking vintage Japanese guitar brands from good to legendary. As a long-time made in Japan guitar player, having a small business where I buy them and sell them to major clients, big stores. Uh, I think I've got a pretty good handle now on what are the ones to look out for. What are the ones that I think rank the best? Now, I said from good. to legendary because, to be frank with you, I haven't run into any made in Japan guitar that was less than good. I had to be frank with you. I really haven't. Even the one fake Fender bass that I got, Fender J was a fake Fender Japan bass, but even that was good. It was a good bass. It was a fake, but it was good. Um, so, so I ranked it from good to legendary. So just to start off there, that was kind of my thinking. Ben, how are you doing? Welcome, sir. Welcome. So that was kind of where my starting point was tonight. So there's that. So let's talk about that a little bit. Um, Let me move over here to my screen. And I made a little chart here. And we'll go through that. Let me move my microphone out of the way. Make a slight adjustment so you can see all of that. There we go. That's good. That works. So I made a little bit of a chart here. Um, Mike, by the way, let me get here in the chat. Scott says, Mike, can we get your views on Columbia House? Their 11 CD deal, poor quality rips. Are you kidding? Does Columbia House still exist? Do they still do that? When I was a kid growing up, you could get like 10 albums for like a penny. Of course, there was always, know, a lot of, things attached to that. But that was Columbia House, and that was the 70s. No, I don't know if they're, I imagine that if they're sending CDs, Columbia House has been around for literally decades. So 50 years that I know of. So probably got a good chance there. Probably. I can't believe that still exists. That's serious. They say, get, oh, let me get 10 albums for a penny. Well, it doesn't quite exactly work out. Read the fine print. That's where I learned as a kid to read the fine print. um, so I've got a ranking here, list here behind me. Since I decided to put the screen here instead of just using it as a decoration, I always intended to use it for stuff like this. So good use of it. Ranking from seventh to number one, my favorite guitar brands, and the brands that I think that you really should take a look at if you haven't, if you're interested in made in Japan guitars. Now, getting made in Japan guitars in the States has become a little bit more expensive, a little bit more harder. Buying them in Europe has made them a little bit easier and not cheaper, but a little bit easier. So depending upon where you live at, really is going Canada, Australia, or wherever you're at, it's really going to make a difference here in terms of what you can find these where you're at. But just so you know, in general, is the idea tonight of what I think from my experience are the brands, if you run into them, that you should take a look at. You should say, oh, I remember that one. That was in Mike's top 7 ranking. So let's take a look at some of these. Seventh place, actually, here at the top, I have the Taisco and the Gaiatone guitars. Now, these were the preliminary guitars of of the 60s in Japan. These were the premier, I mean to say, guitars in the 60s in Japan. And preliminary too. They were the early made in Japan models. And if you look at old 60s J-pop, you can find the videos on YouTube. Look up the Peanuts. That's a title that you can type in English and type in the Peanuts, and you can get an example of 60s Japanese pop music. I like the Peanuts. They have a couple of Japanese songs that I play. I love them. I listen to them sometimes. But if you watch the band, you'll see that a lot of the guitar players are playing Taisco guitars and basses. You'll know them from their quirky designs. Um, the unique pickups that I think were their Japanese copies of toaster pickups, like you would find on a Rickenbacker, some Rickenbackers, or um, guitars of that nature, English guitars. Um, their pickups had unique tones, but these guitars were still not high end builds. They are great guitars for collectors, great guitars for collectors, but not on par with the big names for pro work. I think if you're looking for something quirky, like I believe that Brad, the guitarologist, Brad has a Teisco guitar that he loves, he keeps, as memory serves me. And if you're looking for a quirky guitar, those are the way to go. Those are the way to go, without any doubt. Um, but they're nothing that you would drag into a studio or play on stage. I had one buyer guy who wanted one of these quirky guitars, and he actually gigged them. I went to one of his live shows, and he was playing them, but um, quite frankly, it sounded terrible. I mean, no art, no clarity to these pickups, no articulations, and it was just a wall of mud coming at my ears. And at that time, I didn't have my loop earplugs, which saved my ass at that Redman concert. I'm glad I had those and wore those. But just a wall of sound. And so great for collectors, but not on par with the big names for pro work, in my opinion. But worth taking a look at. Scott says, I'm surprised Columbia House isn't doing a streaming service like Apple Music and Spotify. Yeah, man, I'm just surprised that they're still up and running. That is crazy to me. That's like, that's something. I gotta hand it to them. How they've been able to stay around for 50 years. Hell, McDonald's is folding up. Hello, what is this stream about? Well, this is the Upstairs to the Right Music channel. My name is Mike McWilliams, your host. And on these live streams, we talk about guitar oriented things. Sometimes we talk about Fender or Gibson or Epiphone. Sometimes we talk about pedals. Sometimes we talk about uh, stories from the road, studio gear, you name it. It has to do with making music. We pretty much will cover it here. So, welcome. Glad to have you here, Pijo. Yeah, next on my list is sixth place, which are the Fernandez Bernie guitars. Now, Fernandez went out of business. Actually, they went out of business once in 2011. They kind of came back and then they folded cars late last year. Um, the Fernandez Les Paul copies are solid. Great sustain, great players. Um, there's inconsistent QC, I would say, with the Fernandez and the Bernie models. By the way, if you don't know this story, the Japanese wanted to call those guitars not Bernie, but Bunny. When they hear the English pronunciation of Bunny, they hear Bernie. That's it isn't until you learn like katakana, hiragana, and you start to hear things like ai, kake kuke sashi suse sho lali lule lo. If you start going through the vowels and consonants in Japanese, you start to understand why they did that. So that's a funny story. They wanted to call the guitars Bunny, but they heard Bernie, and they actually spelled it out that way. A few legendary models, but also budget ones that can drag the average ones down. So it's kind of like the Grecos. There's some legendary models among the Grecos, especially when you start getting 600 and above. The 450s and the 380s, things like that, they kind of drag down um, the average. Same thing here with Fernandez and Bernie guitars. But if you can find one of the early 80s Fernandez Strats, you're doing really good. Track this ready. Hello, Rishi. Trying to find ES 175 copy 8 can't stop the music. How you doing? Yeah, you and me both. Like I said, I've tried 175s, 335s, 355s. Um, uh, you know, I I believe that Yamaha may have a 175 copy. I'll take a look at that. But you can certainly look into that yourself. Look into the late 70s Yamahas. I think they have a 175 copy that you might want to take a look at. Didn't they brand a few bunny? Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen any with the the bunny on it. Uh, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. But that's a true story with that. Bye, Rishi. Okay. Yeah, take a look at the older Yamahas. Can't stop the music. I had um, a few in three. I can't remember if they were 175 or 330. I really can't. You have to look back in my old videos to take a look at that. But I do believe that Yamaha made a 175 copy. I think they're one of the few companies that did make one. Heck, even I don't believe Gibson makes those very much. Number five on my list are the Arya Pro 2 guitars. Um, Colin is looking for an Arya Pro 2 Leopard that he used to have back in the late 70s, early 80s. I've been looking for one. They're Les Paul copies. Beautiful tops on it. Made, you in order to get that kind of build, you would have to get a custom shop from Gibson these days. And they're not that, they're not unattainable. They're actually not that expensive. They actually, if you can find them, they're a good buy. They've got excellent necks. If I was to go back to playing Strats again, I'm sorry, if I were to go back to playing Les Pauls again, it would probably be an Arya Pro 2 for me, to be honest. Um, they're often overlooked, and they're still somewhat undervalued in the market. And I bring that up because prices of these guitars, especially from the late 70s, early 80s, started to climb up there. But for some reason, the Aria Pro 2s you can still find at really, really great prices. They had their own innovative designs as well as great copies. So there's really something for everybody there, and that's why I put them in fifth place because they have a lot going for them, and you really can't go wrong. From this point on, actually, really, you really can't go wrong. Run Riot, welcome, sir. Hey, yourself. Good to have you here, sir. Everybody's here tonight. Awesome, man. It is so good to have you guys here. The OG crew. These live streams are wild because I'll do pretty good numbers on them, especially for a channel of my size. Actually, really good numbers. And then sometimes I won't. But I always approach it like if I'm talking to one person, if I'm talking to 10,000, it's always pretty much one the same. So I just want to stop here as I usually do midway and just want to say thanks to you guys for showing up and for supporting this live stream and always being here consistently for me. And that does not go unnoticed. I don't have much of a life, to be honest with you, in terms of friends, close friends, because of my lifestyle. I traveled so much and I've lived in so many different countries. Most of my good friends are in different countries and different places. And it's good to add to that list with you guys. Really, it really is. So thank you to have different friends and more friends in different places. So that's a good thing, guys. Ben Allmark. Mike, is there a big difference between the Arya Pros and the normal Arias, or same company, I'm guessing? Yeah, I kind of got into that. because I had to research that a little bit actually, about that distinction bin. And I've come to the conclusion that you do want to get the guitars that say Aria Pro 2. They do seem to be superior guitars to the ones that are just labeled Aria. Now, with the Aria Pro 2s, however, there is the distinction of those that were made in Japan and those that were made in Korea. My Uncle Carlton's gigging guitar is an Aria Pro 2, as you guys know, that he got in Japan. And so that's what I can say to that. So Aria Pro 2 is what you want to get. That Telecaster that I was contemplating keeping there for a minute until it just again that neck just wasn't working for me. It's weird. It was okay when I played it live on stage for those couple of gigs, but when I had it here and I between what it is, when I figured out what it was with that Telecaster, there have been too many. There had been a decade or more. It had been about 13, 14 years between when I played one of them and when I had it again. And I've had so many other excellent guitars between then and now that that one no longer was the cat's meow that I kind of ascribed to it in my mind. That's wild to me. That's really, really wild to me. Handling these guitars can spoil you in that regard too. It can educate you, but it can spoil you as well. You got to be kind of careful with that. I'm fighting with the neck on my parts caster strat. I like it, but I just am not a fan of these medium jumbo frets, and they just feel like jumbo frets to me. And because I'm so used to the thinner Japanese frets. People don't like those frets. I like those. So it's weird, but you handle enough of them, it'll spoil you, dude. Mike Watson, that's cool. I consider everyone on this channel to be a good friend. Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All my good friends, you guys, in different countries, different places, different time zones. But we all come together here to have a talk, chat. Sometimes you guys cheer me up. Sometimes I'm. It's like that Prince song. Whenever I feel like giving up, whenever my sunshine turns to rain, whenever my hopes and dreams start aiming in the wrong direction, you're always there. It's kind of like that. Which Japanese guitar maker is oldest? I would have to say Matsumoku. Matsumoku. Run Ryan, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hang with. Hey man, it's the part of my day I look forward to. I was bone tired today because I took my dogs to the park and they just ran and ran, and I got to keep up with them. And just all the other things errands I had to run today. And I said, okay, I gotta watch a movie to stay up so that I can watch, so I can do the live stream. So I watched a movie that I haven't seen since it came out in the theaters in 2011. It was Cowboys and Aliens with Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford. And that movie wasn't written and directed by Jon Favreau. And I hadn't seen that in a long time. It wasn't really popular at the time. It kind of got low rankings, but I watched it again, and I have to say that was really entertaining. I'm glad I watched that tonight. That was a good movie. If you guys haven't checked that one out, Cowboys and Aliens. That's a good one. Mr. Rogers in the house. How you doing? Narrow tall, I think on my preference bin saws. Not too fussy though. Yeah, I really like those. And people complain about the Japanese frets, but I like them. I do. And it's just these medium jumbo frets. It's good in some regards, but especially in courting. But I don't know. I don't know. They're just a little too. They're a little high for me. We'll have to add that movie to the list. You really should check that out. You really should. I want to rewatch Earth Girls Are Easy. I saw that movie. That's a good one too. Honestly, that's a good movie. Um, so number fourth place is Yamaha. As you guys know, I have a Yamaha acoustic guitar. Um, their QC, even on their lower price models, is excellent. And some of those older Yamaha models from the 70s and 80s, they hold their value. 90s, like mine, they hold their value. They hold their value. You won't lose money on them. You won't lose money on them. And so I've got no negative notes when it comes to Yamaha. Um, I think that if you're looking for an acoustic guitar, or as I was mentioning earlier, a semi-acoustic or hollow body, I think the Yamahas are the way to go. I've had a Yamaha SA, which is their solid acoustic, I think, or studio acoustic. It means SA. What is that? I had the 700, and I had a 1200, I believe, and those were excellent. Those were just excellent, excellent. Those were 335 copies. Yeah, 330. No, they weren't that big. Maybe they were 345. That's why I'm thinking 175s anyway. They were nice guitars. So I have no negative notes on them. Third place is Tokai. Here on the list. Third right here. We have had ourselves a buttload of Tokais on this channel that we've shown off. And I am still convinced, and there is nobody who will convince me otherwise, that a Strat is better than any Fender Strat made in Japan or in the States that you're going to get. That candy apple red Tokai Strat that I had, I wish I could have kept it. I really wish I had the bread to be able to keep something like that. But that was the finest Stratocaster I've played, felt, everything in the story. In the story. So those lawsuit Strats and Les Pauls from Tokai from the late 70s and early 80s are just excellent. But I have to, more so than the Les Pauls, the Strats are really nice. The Silver Star, if you can find one, a Tokai Silver Star or Golden Star or a Tokai Springy Sound. You can't go wrong. And they rival them, I guess, is a more kinder way of saying it. In my honest opinion, I think they exceed them in some ways, especially the necks. The necks are just lovely. You're not going to get a neck like that out of the custom shop. Anthony Thornhill, how you doing, sir? The gang's all here. Good to have you here. Everybody knows you can't go wrong with the Yamaha. Yeah, you really can't. You can't. You really can't. There's solid body electrics. The Pacifica, and some of the others, I think are great guitars too. Especially if you're looking for a P90 guitar. I would go with some of the Yamaha P90s. Some of those are really great sounding guitars and affordable. They have all different price tiers on those, like they always have. And I think there's something for everybody at every level. So Tokai's, just to wrap up with those guys. It's funny. I put Greco ahead of Tokai's because, as you know, we have had our share of Grecos. Above Tokai, because these Grecos were made at Fujigen, same factory as the later day Fender Japan. They have extremely accurate vintage copies, and some of the guitars that I've had, like the Rock Spirits, I had in 2 of those just recently in my unboxing kind of thing I did there. You can see those, or we've actually showed them here on the live stream. These are really rare and well sought after by collectors. So I put them above Tokai's only because later on they became Fender Japan. That's really why they get a little bit. They get knocked to the second place position in this ranking. Catch up here in the live stream. Bonjour. Comment ça va? Bien? Good to have you here. Yamaha's logo says it all. Yeah. Yeah, the Yamaha logo. There's some esoteric stuff there, guys, actually, but I don't want to get into that right now. First place. So right here, first place on my ranking. Surprisingly enough, I haven't had any of them in. I'm thinking that maybe this week I'm going to try to see if I can find some to get in, or Ibanez. The golden era of the mid 70s to the early 80s. These guitars by Ibanez are not just copies. They are flawless replicas. They also had their original designs, like the Artist series, showing that they could innovate. But and those are well sought after. The Artist series guitars as well. But honestly, from a resale value, from international recognition, from just being excellent guitars, are the Ibanez guitars. I would place them first. And as Michael Watson just said, I've never had a bad Ibanez. Tommy Mack, sir. Good to see you. Welcome. Man, I am so blessed to have all guys show up tonight. Some I haven't seen in a while. It's good to have you guys. It really does cheer me up to have you. Especially good to see you, Tommy. Good to see you, sir. So I put Ibanez number 1 on my list here on my ranking. It's funny, I haven't had them in. I've played certainly a lot of them while I was living in Japan. And as was just said, I've never had a bad one. I've never had a really bad one of all of these. The only ones that I would say that, are the Arya Pros. But even then, no, I'm sorry, not the Arya Pros, but rather the Fernandez guitars. Because they have some budget ones that are not so great, kind of drag the average down on them. But I haven't had a less than good made in Japan guitar. All of them have been good up to legendary. Ben Omar. Oh, not fair. Now you have me all curious about what kind of symbolism hides in the Yamaha logo. I can take a few guesses. Well, I won't get into it because it's going down a rabbit hole that would take a minute, but I'll tell you direction to look into. Look into the Japanese families and the first Japanese emperor, and look at where they came over from China, and then look at the Chinese families, which, by the way, the original kings of China, going back, I believe personally, 5,000, 6,000 years, you can still trace that to the current premier of China. He's a descendant of kings and emperors and empresses of the past of China. That family line still goes on. So that's a place to look at. Sorry, guys, for that digression. I played a bunch of Ibanez, mixed results. Yeah. The Ibanez Destroyer, believe it or not, is something that if you could come across one, you'll get good coin for. I played one once, not my cup of tea, and probably you and I would agree, a mixed kind of bag on it. But man, those things they're popular. The Ibanez Geo is pretty good for the price. I agree. Ibanez, as a guitar company, has such a determination to always do better. Great histories, great story too. I agree, Scott. I agree. Full Metal Chat, the Ibanez, yeah, no doubt. Thanks for the lead. Yeah, take a look into that. You see, And that'll lead you down into other rabbit holes that will be interesting. But they deal into understanding the geopolitical landscape that you're in. When you understand where the real power is, where the real sea of power is in these things. I was, if I hadn't been an English literature major in college, I would have probably been a history major. As a matter of fact, I really wish I had it. Next to being a composer and producer, my real other ambition actually was to be a history scholar. So there's that. Anyway, I'm not dead yet. Maybe that'll be a second life for me, or a third life, actually. I'm in my third stage, as they say. Now, the criteria that I used to make this listing was based on build quality, the material and the craftsmanship, which across the board, again, as I pointed out, with all seven of these on the ranking, you really can't go wrong. The consistency, good guitars across the years, not just one golden period. And this really falls down in line. However, like I said, the Ibanez, I put them above because, again, like I said, some of those Ibanez guitars are just so good. And they're better. And I'm saying it's as good as the ones in the top three. That's something. But so there's that innovation as well. Not just the copies, but what else did that company do in order to come out with their own thing? For example, Yamaha, with their designs that they worked out with Carlos Santana. And he was playing those Yamaha guitars, as we talked about before, for a long time in the 70s. My favorite Santana album was recorded with a Yamaha guitar. And also the value today. I put that as a fourth consideration because I really didn't want to get into prices of things, but just a good, just point out the ones that are a good deal for what they're priced for on the market. So those were my criteria tonight, really for this ranking. And I like to hear from you, of course, here in the chat. Which would be, if maybe I didn't even make this list, what would be your personal number one pick? Now, good to legendary doesn't necessarily mean the lower brands are bad. I put a little note here. Even a Tysco has some magic in the right hands. Don't get me wrong, but again, some of these are more suited than others. Some are collectors, which put them lower in the rank more than something that a pro or player would use. So again, maybe that was a fifth consideration there, actually, now that I think about it. The Ibanez Destroyer was really cool when it showed up in Def Leppard Pirate. Yep. Everybody's wanted one because of that. Like I said, I ran into one at a vintage show and got a chance to hold it and strum it a little bit. If you can find one, they got up there in price. Full Metal Chad, didn't Ibanez get sued by Gibson for their Les Paul copies? Yes, it was. It wasn't sued. What happened is they were sent a cease and desist letter because you can't. They really had no standing. They had no legal standing in the Japanese courts. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until 2011 with the Fernandez lawsuit that kind of got thrown out. That it was still, even up to that point, was legal standing. But they could send a cease and desist order, and by that point, they had already stopped doing it. But if you can get them before that period, like I said, they're great. I agree. Ibanez got to be on the top. Yeah, for my criteria reasons, just to be fair, my personal love for Tokais, I couldn't let that get in the way of what keeping that criteria true really came out to. I haven't tried a high price Ibanez. Just a lot of my friends' entry level models. I should go put my hands on some high end or middle range. Again, like they do tiers, just like all the rest of the companies there in Japan. The mid ones are fine. You find a mid tier Ibanez, you're golden. Mike, do Japanese make do steel guitars? American bluegrass instruments, lap steels? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Um, can't think of. Oh, Divisor, who, if you look at that short clip that I just put up on my feed, they also make those kind of guitars as well. There may be some in that clip. Certainly, there's some folk guitars. Divisor, Scott. Mo Arthur, what are your thoughts in a concave neck guitar? I, I I don't like I don't like those. I mean, it's bad enough that I'm really angsting over the frets. So you can imagine what my thoughts are on a concave neck. A scallop, the scooped frets also is another thing that, again, is just not something that would not fit my playing style. Pandemania never ended. Next out, big old dish in it, super light high action. Yeah, banana neck. I've had, I've gotten in a few, actually, Mo, a few vintage guitars that I had to get in. I had to work serious voodoo to get rid of that banana neck in it, and some of those, and it just and it so it was good enough so that I could get it to my buyer, because not that I let them know that I had to fix it, but my gosh, we're talking like I'm not fishing. Well, that's good. And, none of us have poles either, so I guess you could do what my uncle used to do, my uncle Bud, and dynamite fish, but they kind of frown upon that these days. Hey, Vic, what's happening? So there's that, guys. Any chance you could play us an impromptu song? Don't have any instruments around me, Mo. But I would appreciate it. So thank you for the segue. I would appreciate it if you guys would go to my shorts, YouTube shorts, and take a look at my recent album promotion over on bandcamp.com. Look up Mike McWilliams or Asanoki, the name of my band, and take a look at those albums. Support this channel, guys, by buying a single, buying an album. None of the money from this channel goes directly to me, but the money for the album sales does. So that makes a big difference. So I do. I'm helping out a kid making way through college with his mom. It's just a great story, great folks. And my YouTube money, I'm giving to them right now to make sure she's got her books to make it through. Because she's smart. I've known her. She was my housekeeper's daughter. Smart girl. Just need a little bit of help, and so that's where my YouTube money goes. The money for the album sales goes directly to me. So either way, you're helping out a good cause. So support this channel by checking that out. I'm going to do that right now. Thank you, Scott. Any new music coming in 2025? Yes, Tommy. So I am going to put together a compilation album of stuff of some of the other rock tunes on the other 5 albums that are on Spotify and other places, along with some new material. I just recorded 2 songs. I played you guys one of them a couple of weeks back for the album that I worked on. I finished the second one as well. And it's funny, I have enough material actually for a whole album in itself in my head. I don't want to do that. But I will add at least 3 or 4 brand new tracks to this third Asanoki album. Um, I've titled it right now "Mostly Misses." You know, they have hits and misses. Well, these were mostly misses. There was one hit on the album, but actually, but that's the tentative title for that. So this is going to be coming out here. Welcome to Russia with Love. Much love to you. So All right. So we're in the last. So I've been signed for mostly misses. Yeah. Yeah, I am going to bring that's tentative title right now. Mostly misses. It's good. The artwork I'm thinking of is a dartboard with the all the darts are everywhere, but but the center. With a white background. So I'm already thinking even of the artwork for that one. But that's a tentative title for that third Asanoki album. Um, Switching gears here. So we kind of got into some weird, interesting stuff. I like the title and the dartboard idea. Thank you, man. One of the beautiful things about a creative, keeping your mind flexible is keeping is your ability to be creative. So if whatever creative expression you have, will exercise that because it's just like any other muscle. If you don't work it, you will lose it. Do you try to get your music mics? Are their royalties worth it? Yes, certainly. I got, as you know, I got my stuff in TV commercials. I have submitted just recently a song to go into an independent film. So we see. I submit them all the time, uh, but they don't get chosen. But I have a feeling that I am starting to get recognized as somebody that they may take an interest in, and we'll have to see. I'm representing myself. That doesn't help, but yeah, I do that still. I don't want this stuff to just sit around. I like to try to do something with it. Are the royalties worth it? Yes, as long as you negotiate it. Although with me, I find that taking a flat fee up front usually save you a lot of headache on the backside. Yeah, you maybe not make as much. You're kind of rolling the dice there, but you got paid. Can you sing us a few lines from Lovely Fool? Sometimes a love that gets its start in June can be torn apart like a paper moon. So be careful what you say. I can't remember the lyrics. You may find your love someday a paved parking lot, and you're alone, my lovely fool. Yeah, I like that song. That song, I was listening to Paper Moon. I even reference it a little bit musically at the end of that song. But that song sprung for me listening to the song Paper Moon. Believe it or not. Excellent, sir. Thank you, Mo. Let's switch gears here. Let's switch gears here. All right, guys. I've been reading from the Weird Scenes Inside the Canyons book. Thoughts on a rev star. Mo, I got to tell you, I would do it. That's what I was talking about earlier with the Yamaha models, the P90 models. A P90 rev star, if you're going to go for a P90 guitar these days, any level of a rev star is going to be a great guitar. If you can swing it and you can get the higher end rev star model, the P90, then you won't need another guitar. That would be a contender for a desert island guitar. What is this? Let me see. That Scott's put up here. Oh yeah. So this is the version. This is the album version, and then I think if you watch my YouTube shorts, in there I have the live version where I'm playing piano, and then I get up and play the guitar. Yeah, I play piano and guitar live on that track. That's a lot of fun. It is. It is a lot of fun because, I used to watch videos of Prince sitting there playing The Question of You. And he started out playing piano, but he had his guitar strapped to his back. play piano part, and then he'd get up, stand up on top of the piano, and start playing his guitar part. And the live version of Lovely Fool, I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to, because I had to, play both parts. I'm going to play the piano intro and outro, but in between, I'm going to play the guitar. And that was kind of my, getting to do, it's just cool. That's all I can say. So watch the shorts on that. You can see both the guitar part and me playing the piano for this song. Um, yeah, the Tag 3 Yamaha. The Rev Star Mo is the way to go. I can't say anything bad about it. Now, if you guys have noticed, um, I've been talking about all of the characters. Um I'm sorry. Does Geddy Lee get multiple checks? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Try to Rev Star and Guitar Center once. It was pretty dang nice. Yeah, they are sweet guitars, guys. I was mentioning Joni Mitchell in my last live stream and talking about the fact that she was part of this Laurel Canyon scene that we've been talking about. I'm reading excerpts from the book Weird Scenes in the Canyon about the early 60s, though the late to early 70s music scene in Laurel Canyon. I grew up in Los Angeles. I worked up in Laurel Canyon. I worked for a porn guy named Jeff Stryker. Jeff Stryker was his name. And as a summer job, I was looking through the LA Weekly, saw an ad. I was between my freshman and sophomore year, and I ended up working up in Laurel Canyon for a guy who was a porn actor and director. It's a whole other story for another time, but true story. So I know Laurel Canyon very well. And I've been talking about it because even in my teenage and early 20 years, when I would drive up through that area, it had a vibe to it. It had a vibe to it, just like Griffith Park has a vibe to it. It had a very heavy kind of feeling to it, almost ominous, I would say. And at nighttime, coming down Laurel Canyon down to Sunset, it could be kind of downright spooky, the way that I remember it. Now, I've been talking about all the characters that have made up this scene recently. Or not recently, but through the course of reading this, we've talked about the musicians and their backgrounds. We've talked about some of the mobsters that were managing the musicians during this time. We've talked about the hippies and the groupies and the side cast of characters that showed up all around the same time on this scene. Um, we've delved into a lot of these things to sort of give you overview of what this scene really was. It was a diabolical but creative place. And I know that sounds strange, but that really could be said. It was a very creative, diabolical place. I want to read to you tonight a passage from Joni Mitchell's song People's Parties. I mentioned in the last live stream because in it, she's actually detailing in lyrically one of those parties that occurred like at Mama Cass's house or at Frank Zappa's log cabin. And I think it gives you a view of what these parties were about, and also gives you an insight into the fourth group of people, or the fourth group of persons that I'm going to introduce into this mix tonight, and that's Hollywood actors. If you notice, I haven't talked about the Hollywood actors that were heavily involved in this scene, so I'm going to get into that tonight. So I told you when I met you, Joni writes, I was crazy. Cry for us all, beauty. Cry for Eddie in the corner, thinking he's nobody, and Jack behind his joker, and Stone Cold Grace behind her fan, and me in my frightened silence thinking I don't understand. So she's describing a scene, you know, of all the people at this party. They've got a lot of style. They got stamps of many countries. They got passport smiles. Some are friendly, some are cutting, some are watching it from the wings, some are standing in the center, giving to get something. This line, and Jack behind his Joker. This is Jack Nicholson she's talking about. And I find it very interesting that 2 decades, almost 2 decades before he actually played, no, 2 decades, before he actually played the actual Joker, Joni Mitchell in this song referred to Jack behind his Joker. And Stone Cold Grace Slick from the Jefferson Airplane, and Stone Cold Grace to describe her, which if you know anything about Grace Slick and her demeanor, Stone Cold Grace behind her fan really accurately describes her. And me in my frightened silence thinking I don't understand. Um, the Hollywood actors, Jack behind his Joker. Again, a prophetic line. I don't know how he was behind his Joker and then he brought it out front. But that's an actual line in this song. But the Hollywood actors, was Screaming Jay Hawkins up to no good back in the day? Oh boy, I'll get into that. But yeah, we'll get into that one of these days. Now we've talked about the musicians, the gangsters, the freaks, the hippies, whatever you want to call them. Now we're going to talk about the Young Turks of that era. Like the freaks, which we talked about, the girls who were basically brought together, 30 or some odd girls who to become made to order, or not even rental groupies, but groupies that were purposely sent to these gigs in order to create some kind of steam behind them. Because if you're a record exec and you walked into the doors and you have all these girls in there, you're thinking, hey, maybe there's something here, kind of situation. So we talked about them, but the Young Turks. You had Peter Fonda. You had the just before mentioned Jack Nicholson, Bruce Dern, Dennis Hopper, Warren Beatty, Jane Fonda, Nancy Sinatra, and, of course, the soon to be doomed Sharon Tate. These Turks were instrumental in distracting attention away from the less than stellar musicianship on the stage. In other words, they showed up at these gigs of these Laurel Canyon musicians for the same reasons that the freaks and the groupies showed up, in order to distract the crowd. Their presence on the strip was heavily promoted by the media. Locals and tourists alike knew where to go to gawk at these Young Turks, these Hollywood stars. These Hollywood stars, including Jane Mansfield, who also at this time was on the Laurel Canyon scene, dig that. Jane Manson was on the scene. And by the way, Mansfield had direct ties to Anton LaVey and his Church of Satan. I talked about that before, that Jane Mansfield was a member of Church of Satan. Many of these young and glamorous Hollywood stars forged very close bonds with the Laurel Canyon musicians. Some of them, including Peter Fonda, found homes in the canyon so that they could live, work, and party amongst the rock stars. See, there's this saying out there that actors really want to become musicians, and musicians really want to become rock stars. Really want to become actors. And I think that's true, because you see so many actors, not really, Johnny Depp, he crossed that bridge from being an actor to a musician. You see that. That's a good example of an actor who wants to be. And some would argue he was a musician first, but let's be honest. And of course, there's so many musicians who try their hand at being an actor. I understand Ice Cube's new movie is great. Um, so there's that. Um, John Phillips' wife, Michelle, was into just about every swinging dick in the canyon, including Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper, Warren Beatty, Roman Polanski, and Gene Clark of the Byrds were all hitting that. Now, some of them never left the canyon. Jack Nicholson, to this day, still lives uh, between Laurel Canyon and Coldwater Canyon and Mulholland Drive. And also, Warren Beatty is too, still lives up in that area. So there's that. Um, Turn your screen a quarter to the right, and all your numbers are positive. I'm gonna get back to you on that one. um, but let's continue with this one. So, the symbiotic relationship between Laurel Canyon actors and Laurel Canyon musicians, from this arose a series of feature films that are now considered actually classics. One such film, The Trip, 1967, an unintentional, hilarious attempt to create a cinema version, facsimile of a LSD trip, written by Jack Nicholson. The movie starred Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, Bruce Dern, Roger Corman was in the director's chair. Worked side by side with David Cosby's dad, by the way, on no less than 23 feature films, by the way. Uh, they also were doing work with, well, just about everybody here. I'm not familiar with Love's Arthur Lee, but a few interesting people who were up there. In the house, most of these things were shot at, was the home of Love's Arthur Lee. I see what that means. Also, there was a 1968 movie by the Monkees, Head, also written by Jack Nicholson. So Jack Nicholson was doing a lot of writing at that time. Again, featuring Dennis Hopper, Jack Nicholson, and also Frank Zappa was in that movie. I forgot that. The music was by the Monkees, with a mix of songs written by the band and contributors like Carole King and Harry Nilsson. And actually, the music was pretty doggone good. And actually, the movie, if you've never seen Head, you should watch it. I do believe it's on YouTube. Is actually pretty good too. And I know this sounds weird, but it was a Jack Nicholson Monkees movie. But you didn't know that Jack Nicholson wrote the Monkees movie Head. I know some of you, by the way, he writes in here, out there in Readerland, cringe every time I mention the Monkees as though they were a real band. Well, the reality, though, is that they were every bit as real as most of their contemporaries. And while the made-for-TV Beatles replicants were looked down upon by music critics and fans alike, they were fully accepted as members of the musical fraternity and the Laurel Canyon community. The homes of both Mickey Dolenz and Peter Tork were popular canyon hangouts in the late 60s for a number of the real musicians, as well as the actors and actresses before mentioned, like Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson. And actually, there were a lot of the real musicians, by the way, he notes, of Laurel Canyon that auditioned to try to become a Monkee. Stephen Stills auditioned to become a Monkee. Brian McLean from Love also auditioned. Three Dog Night's Danny Hilton also auditioned to become a Monkee. They were all at the casting call, and they were all rejected. I just can't see Stephen Stills as a Monkee. But returning back to these young Turks, their rise and their claim to fame also, again, the symbiotic relationship between these two groups came about because of their association with this burgeoning Laurel Canyon music scene and all the things that came along with that. Not to mention, Geffen Records, which will later on go to produce films from these Laurel Canyon individuals. So there is that. Easy Rider. Um, was inspired actually by John Phillips' writing partner Graham Parsons or Roger McGuinn. So even the actors in this, like a famous movie like Easy Rider, were taking their cues from real life Laurel Canyon musicians. So I mentioned this. I bring this third group in tonight, to a fourth group tonight of individuals up here to realize that this was not organic, and it certainly was made in order to shape the direction that popular culture would go for the next decade or more. Michael Watson, I love that the monkey. I love the monkeys back. I never had a problem with the monkeys. Memester says, "What's going on behind you?" This was a chart that we were doing earlier, and as a matter of fact, since we're done with that, it seems to be causing so much consternation. We'll get rid of that and put up our usual company logo as we get ready to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this live stream as always. I am going to actually go to bed. Actually, no, I'm going to read tonight. I'm reading history of Irish folklore, and so I'm going to read that tonight until I drift off. That's some interesting stuff. You guys, take care. Take care. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me and discussing these topics. So ranking vintage Japanese guitar brands from good to legendary was tonight's topic, main topic. I want to thank you guys just for being here. It really does mean a lot to me. And some weeks when my energy is low and I'm just feeling down and I feel like the whole world is on my shoulders, I come here and I sit down, and just an hour or so I spend with you guys, I feel like I'm ready to take on the world. So thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Yeah, guys, you have a good one. God bless, and I'll see you on Wednesday. You take care. Bye-bye.